I think we're good. I think we're live. I'm hoping that all of the technology gods are smiling upon us today. This is the first live we're doing from the Cerebral Selling Sales Lab, and I'm really looking forward to this session today. If you're joining us live, then feel free to drop any links or kind of comments or whatever you want, questions in the comments field here. I'll be able to see it on the live, but thank you for joining us today. If you're joining this on a replay, welcome to you too. It is great to be with you all. I'm David Premer, founder and chief sales scientist over here at Cerebral Selling, and you're joining me here today for the Sell the Way You Buy book club. This is actually the second book club that I've done. The first one was almost a year ago now. I can't believe it, but I figured, hey, you know what? What better time like the present? And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was because so many of you have been reaching out to say how much you've been enjoying the book, the impact that it's had on, your sales operation and how you interact with customers and just your overall mindset. So I just want to say I'm super, super grateful. I know a lot of you over the course of the months since the book's been out have been sending me pictures of like you and the book and the kind of the book in the wild. And I have to say, I absolutely love seeing those. In fact, I made a little, you can see here, a little thank you collage to thank you for all of the awesome support you've given the book. I want you to know I saved every one of these pictures and somehow found a piece of software that allows me to shove them all together in some kind of collage here. But really, really appreciate all of your support. I know that, there's so much content out there these days, and I appreciate you devoting even just a little bit of time and attention to mine. And I hope that I'm able to pay you back today with, and in weeks to come, with just a little bit of content, a little bit of context, some nuggets to think on that will help you improve your sales execution. Now, one of the things that people had been asking me, as I said, hey, I'm going to do this book club, what is it you want to talk about as it relates to the content in the book? And the kind of the number one thing by far that people kind of came back and said is they said, we would love to know, and this is kind of funny because this came up again in the last book club that we did almost a year ago. It was like, which strategy have you seen have the biggest impact on sales conversion? Like, what do you talk about in the book? What was the thing that you see, even in your kind of your sales practice, the biggest impact on sales conversion? And I think as I said in kind of the lead up to this, it wasn't even close. Like I can tell you what this is, off the top of my head. And I've sometimes called it something a little different. What I call it in my training practice is a little different than what I call it in the book. But I'll tell you what this tactic is, and then I want to go into just a little bit of background, a little bit of history as to like what this tactic's all about, how it works, and why it's so important. So this tactic we're going to talk about today is what I refer to as assumptive priming. Right? I call it assumptive priming. In the book, I think I refer to this in chapter 6, which I'll give you the book reference in a second. I think it's page 161. I refer to this as labeling your customer's pain. But it has this amazing impact whenever you use this tactic with a customer. And by the way, like as sellers, we are all buyers. And I've been on the buying side of many a product and service and have had this tactic used on me. And I say used on me, it's not like something a sales rep is deliberately using, because we're going to talk about how to use it. Marketing can use it. It can be content on your website and so on. But it has this kind of strange, funny impact of literally just telling someone to just shut up, take my money. I know you can't, my head's blocking a little bit here. But it's just like, okay, you know what? You've reached into my head. You've pulled out exactly what I'm thinking. I totally get, where you're coming from here. Take my money, right? So that's really what we want to get to. And it's funny because in normal everyday life as consumers, we have these kind of, moments where we see a product or a service or a salesperson kind of, gives us a pitch and we're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I can't believe I hadn't thought of that before or I needed that before. And it's so funny when I went to this is a recent content ad here. When I went to, go to Twitter just to mention on Twitter, hey, look, I'm going live at this, in the sales lab in half an hour. A friend of mine, Jen, I saw a tweet from her where she basically posted, you can see here, she posted this picture of, a suitcase with a cup holder on the side of it, right? And she's like, I had no idea I needed this thing until today. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about here, right? Like this idea that when we interact with buyers, And we're able to kind of reach into their subconscious, their inner psyche, and kind of pull out something that they hadn't thought of, they hadn't considered, right? They didn't know that those motivations were driving them. They didn't know they even had those problems. It has a massive impact on our ability to convert them. And like my friend Jen is like, hey, take my money, right? Like this is the best thing I've ever seen. We can do that as well in our sales motion if we're able to nail a few key challenges. And that's actually what I want to talk about here, just to kind of as we get into this topic of assumptive priming. And I'm going to tell you about the topic. I'm going to give you some examples. I'll tell you about some clients that have been using it with great success. But, the idea behind assumptive priming is that it helps overcome three big challenges that a lot of sellers, a lot of marketing organizations face when they're trying to convert buyers. And if I can I'm just going to go to go to my whiteboard here, right? So I'm not looking away from you. So if you think about like what are the key challenges that we as sellers have in the market, and it's interesting, these challenges exist across a whole variety of kind of tactics and strategies. But see where I'm going with this. So one of the biggest problems that we experience as sellers when we go out and we try to describe what we do is we just all end up sounding the same. And I'm not going to show it to you here. I have a slide where I kind of talk about people's value proposition. And as we describe what we do, it's like, oh yeah, we save people time, we reduce cycle times, we improve revenue, we increase security. Like I could list, kind of 10 high-level value propositions. And I'm sure everyone listening to this, this video would say, oh yeah, like I have that, right? We go out and we're like, oh yeah, we help, and I'm sure you are subject to this too when you get prospected into by salespeople saying, oh yeah, like we're going to help increase your revenue, we're going to get you hot leads, and these things aren't incorrect, they're not unethical, they're not completely, without truth, but the reality is that the more we just sound the same as everyone else and the more we kind of say the same things as everyone else, what happens is we end up with a problem of like no attention, right? We have not been able to garner the attention of our customers because we just all sound the same. And so by survival, they drown us out, right? And again, I'm not saying that you don't have value, your product doesn't have value. I'm not saying that you don't do something like that's unique and wonderful and something that your clients should respect and buy into, but they don't know that yet, right? Like if your high-level value proposition just sounds the same as everyone else, then they will never get to know you the way you want them to. So you sound the same, you don't have their attention, and then what happens is because you don't have these things, you lack the credibility, right? Like this issue of like credibility and trust, and customers are always wondering, all right, who the hell is this person? When you're reaching out, whether it's like inbound, outbound, remarketing, people are always wondering like, who the hell is this person? And why should I even listen to you, right? Like that's what's going on in the back of their mind. So the question is like, oh, then great. Well, then how do we become the kind of sellers that people will actually listen to? And, when you think about how to transition from like this kind of problem, this kind of model, there's a few things that you want to consider. So the first thing is like, if you sound the same, then the thing that I need to do is this is kind of funny to say, I need to change the words that you say. Like you need to say different things than other people. But it's not just the words that you say, right? In order to get your attention, and hopefully with what I'm saying here and kind of how I say acting here, but I'm not acting, this is the way I usually am. The way I'm acting here, it's not just the words I'm saying, it's how I'm saying it, right? So there's a certain consideration for your tone and approach, right? The tone and approach that you take, kind of your intonation, the emphasis that you put on your words, kind of how you approach the situation. One of the things I talk about in the book is this idea of reactance and the fact that like when we approach our customers with a certain degree of what I call confirmation bias, and not that what I call confirmation bias, it's a thing called confirmation bias, where our customers feel like we're trying to box them in, right? And like limit their ability to choose freely. And it can be something as simple as saying, hey, look, if now's not a good time, like we can revisit this in a month from now. Like I want to make sure this is a good time for you, right? Like you're kind of taking the pressure off. They feel good about moving forward with you. So again, back to this, it's not just the words. It's not just, and the words are important. It's how you use the words, the tone and the approach. And the reality is that if you can nail the right words with the right tone and approach, then you will build, right, like that all-important element of trust and be able to combat the issue of lack of credibility. And one of the reasons why I really love this tactic and why it actually has like a massively high conversion rate is because it combines all these elements. Like you're choosing the right words, you're using them at the right time with the right tone, with the right approach. But, today, we don't have time to get into everything and solve world peace, unfortunately. So what I want to do today was I want to focus a lot on the words. And I think, some of the tone and approach and trust that'll fall out of it. But this is, I think, where I see a lot of organizations struggle, a lot of sellers struggle, which is they say, well, look, like what I actually do is I help, companies and these kinds of people improve A, B, and C and reduce X, Y, and Z. And that's what I do, right? But the problem is if you just say the same thing as everyone else, then again, you're going to just be stuck, right, in that sea of sameness. So we want to say and do things differently. And that kind of gets us back to, if I were to go back, hold on a sec here, to the old slides, back to our conversation around assumptive priming and how do we make this happen. Now, again, I mentioned in the book, I talk about this on page 161. I call it labeling their pain. And actually in this section, which was long enough, if you've read the book, that you know that, by the way, the mindful discovery chapter is twice as big as any chapter in the book. When I talk about messaging, talk about discovery, talk about objection handling, and the quick side story is that when I was writing the book, I went to my publisher and I said, look, I got this big monster chapter and it's twice as big as all the other chapters. Should I cut it down? Should I, maybe split it up or break it? Like, what should I do? And they said, well, what's it about? I'm like, what's about discovery? And they said, well, is discovery like the most important part of the sales cycle, the sales process? And I said, yes, it is. Arguably it is. And they're like, okay, well then it deserves twice the space. So that discovery chapter, it's a good value. There's lots of good stories, lots of good context in there. But so what I do is I talk about in the book this topic of assumptive priming. And to help you kind of get the words, right? Like as we think about what words are we going to use to describe what it is that we do, I want to go back to this model that I talk about in the book, what I've referred to as the 3 types of customer problems. And if you've been following my content recently, I'll drop you a link at the end. I've been talking about this in a bunch of my YouTube videos recently, but it begs reviewing now because it's going to be important when we talk about, okay, well, how do we operationalize this assumptive priming tactic? And the idea is that when we talk to our customers about the kind of problems that they have, there's 3 main types of problems. So the first type of problem is what I refer to as the known spoken. So these are problems that your customers have, and they have, and they know they have. And when you say, oh yeah, like you're looking to generate more leads, you're looking to improve your revenue, you're looking to increase your security, like these are the things that they're just very willing to open up about. Like if you almost think about it, if you went into a store, like an electronics store, to buy a TV, and you wanted to know about that TV, the stuff that's written on the little card below the the TV screen or the kind of like on the shelf, that's what the known spoken is, right? It's just like normal, regular stuff that people are very willing to talk about. But then we get into the second type of customer problem, which is what I refer to as the known unspoken. So again, these are problems that your customers have, and they have, and they know they have. But when you ask them about what their problems are, they're not going to open up about these things so quickly, right? They're going to, because they're either sensitive, embarrassing, confidential, right? So it's like if you're trying to sell IT security software to someone who just had like a data breach in their business, they may not be so quick to open up and tell you, oh yeah, like I'm looking at this thing because I had a data breach in my business. Just the same way, and I often talk about this in my training, is that like if I came to the gym to work with a personal trainer and I was there because I was, fictitious story, I was trying to get in shape for my wife. We've been married for many years. I'm sensing that maybe she doesn't find me as desirable as she once did. Fictitious story, I'm saying. And I'm there in the gym. And when the trainer asks me why I'm there, I'm probably not going to say that thing, at least not right away, right? This gets back to, go back to the drawing here, right? Like this gets back to like, if all I'm saying is, oh yeah, I've just helped people get in the best shape of their life and all that kind of stuff, then there's no trust. Like I don't trust you enough to open up and tell you what my biggest, baddest problems are. And then the third type of customer problem is what I refer to as the unknown You gotta learn how to type. Unknown, unspoken, right? And what are these? These are problems that our customers have, and we know they have because we're the doctor and we see this stuff all the time. But it's not that they don't know they have these problems. It's just that these problems that they have, they're just not, first of all, they may not know they have these problems, but these problems may also not be super top of mind for them. So, I'll give you some examples of this. But this idea that, like, let's say, for example, they're subject to some kind of legislation that's brand new that they may not be aware of, or maybe, there's a new, cyber threat to their business that it wasn't even on their radar, right? Or it could be more, it could be more hidden than that. Like my friend Jen with her cup holder on the side of her piece of luggage. Like, oh my gosh, I was walking through the airport like a chump, like spilling my Starbucks everywhere. Little did I know there was this solution. Again, your customers aren't holding out on you by not telling you these things, but they go unspoken, right? They're not trying to intentionally deceive you, but they go unspoken just because either they're not aware or they're just not top of mind, right? Now, to save you kind of like the trouble of trying to figure out, okay, like which one of these things, as you think, when you're trying to build that important trust and credibility, if I go back to the drawing board here, when you're trying to, create that amazing trust and credibility with your customer, which of these things are the most important? Which of these things are going to be the most impactful? Well, a lot of people tend to gravitate towards the unknown unspoken, but I would say the known unspoken can be very powerful as well. And so what we want to do when we start thinking about, okay, like how are we going to use this tactic of assumptive priming to basically reach into our customer's mind and pull out some of the known unspoken, the unknown unspoken, and kind of shove it back in their face so that, again, we're picking the right words, right? The words that convert, the words that resonate with them. We're saying it in just the right way. And we're doing it in a way that establishes trust because we don't sound the same as everyone else. And we're reaching deep, right? Deep into their mind to pick out the problems that, that they didn't even necessarily know they had or had never crystallized in the way that we are just doing it now. And to kind of highlight what this looks like, right? Like just kind of at a high level, the thing that you would do is you would say, okay, for my customer, this is the tactic, right? For my customer, what kind of things would fall into those categories, like the known spoken, the known unspoken, and then serve it back to them in your selling motion. And this is kind of what, if I were to show you this like on a slide, this is kind of like what it would look like. And I'm going to just do a quick moving of my head here. So I'm going to try to make it least offensive as possible. This is what it would look like, right? So what assumptions, this is why I call it assumptive priming or labeling your customer's pain, can we make about the customer's pain based on what we know about their current state? So, let's say, I'll give you an example. One of my clients who did a fantastic job at this, they are a cloud bookkeeping platform. And what they said is look, when we are on the phone with a customer and they are primarily inbound, they get a lot of like inbound interest in their product or service. And they say, look, when people come to us from a bookkeeping perspective, they're only coming from one of a few places, right? They don't know what bookkeeping is. And it's a thing they should do. Number two, they're doing bookkeeping today, but they're doing it like manually on like, pen and paper in a ledger somewhere. Maybe they're using spreadsheets or they're using QuickBooks for their accounting or for their bookkeeping. And because QuickBooks in that industry is like the big gorilla that has like the massive market share. So what we know is when we ask the customer, okay, like, can I just ask you, what are you doing today for bookkeeping? And they tell us one of those things, then what happens is we immediately launch into a talk track that is specifically geared to those kinds of things, the current state, and we loop in a bunch of the unknown or maybe unspoken problems into that narrative. So, for example, if I'm talking to you and I'm saying, hey, look, you're what are you doing today for bookkeeping? And they say, well, I'm using QuickBooks, right? So that might be like the talk track for competitor A. I might say, hey, look, I totally understand where you're coming from. It's interesting. I've been talking with a lot of QuickBooks customers lately. A lot have been coming over to us, and they tell us like three big things, right? Like the price of the solution keeps changing. Number two, when they call, they can't speak to anyone. It's not like a very inconsistent experience. And number three, some other thing, right? And they can't get help when they need it. The reports are good, but not specific to their kind of business, not specifically valuable to their kind of business. And it doesn't matter what these things are. The idea is that based on what I know about you, I'm going to go into a particular talk track related to the pains that you're probably going to be experiencing. I'll give you another example. This is like from my personal practice. And again, I talk about this specific thing on page 165 of Sell the Way You Buy. Again, it's that same section on labeling their pain, because this is like the example. Now, I talk about this specifically in the book, but this was kind of based on, before the book came out, I wrote this article in Harvard Business a couple of years ago, actually a few years ago now. And it was about how younger salespeople can win over older customers. And the idea is, and I've come to realize now that first of all, it's not an issue so much with young salespeople and old customers, which can be the case, but it has to do with just an imbalance of experience. And I refer to this, as you can see at the top here, I refer to this as experience asymmetry. And so what is experience asymmetry? This happens when you have a younger, less experienced seller calling on a more senior level experienced buyer, right, whose job they've never done. So there's this imbalance. And certainly if you're young and new and you're being told to call high, you're going to experience this. But if let's say you're an experienced seller and you're new to your company or you're new to your industry, right, you're going to experience this as well. And to kind of frame this up, and again, it begs to, I want to kind of go into just a teensy bit of detail here, because then you'll kind of appreciate where I'm coming from here. So I had this experience when I was back at Salesforce, where I would have a lot of young, enthusiastic sales reps, right? So I was running small business sales for the Eastern US, loved the experience, tons of young, enthusiastic sales reps who we were telling to call on more experienced buyers whose job they've never done. And often I would have reps with lots of activity, right? Lots of calls, lots of emails, and no pipeline. And so I would go to these reps and I would say, like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, do you not have accounts to call into? Like, do you not have, white space? Do you not know who to call? Are you calling at the wrong time of day? You saying the wrong things? Are the words wrong? And they're like, no, David, we're doing all those things. And I would say, look, I don't know. Like, I should listen to your calls then. Let me just listen to a couple of your call recordings with customers and see if I can pick something out. And I would listen to these calls. And I would close my eyes and I would not even care about the words. Like, I don't even care about the words that you're saying. But I would say to them, it sounds to me like you're bothering this customer. Like, back to this conversation about, tone and approach, right? Tone and approach, very important. It sounds to me like the words are right, but you're saying it as though you think the customer is going to tell you to, buzz off. Like, it's almost like the way I kind of describe it. When my kids come to me and they're about to hit me up for something that they think I'm going to say no to, it's like I can tell immediately, right? Just by their tone. That's why I say back to this. That's why, like, the tone is actually quite important, right? So the idea is, if we want to kind of nail this problem, then we need to get inside the mind of our customers and not only pick the right words, but with the right tone. So the way I kind of frame up this problem of experience asymmetry, when I talk to customers of mine now who have, so back to, like, let's go back to this chart here of assumptive priming. So what assumptions can I make about my customer's pain based on what I know about their current state? Well, if I'm working with a high growth B2B technology company that has lots of young and well-intentioned and enthusiastic sales reps, okay, young sales reps, and they're told to call high, or they're just, they're told to talk to customers in general whose job they've never done, I suspect that some of this experience asymmetry, like this fear, right, this tone, is going to manifest in their voice, and it's going to be very off-putting to the customer. Again, it's like when my kids come to me and they're about to hit me up for something they think I'm going to say no to, I can tell, right? And your customers can tell as well. So when I'm working with an organization who has a lot of these young, enthusiastic sales reps, I say, can I ask you a question? Do you ever listen to their calls? Do you ever hear some of the fear and trepidation in their voice? To the extent that, like, it actually puts customers off and makes the customers wonder who they are and what they're going to learn from this person about how to run their business. This is the equivalent of, like, the suitcase with the cup holder, right? Customers will say, my clients will say to me, yes, David, that thing that you said, I forget what it was called, experience something. We have that, right? And immediately, when I'm able to summarize what they're thinking, the problem that they have, with the right words, with the right tone and approach, I establish immediate trust and credibility, And that's where you get that. Now, I'm not saying this happens with me, but that's where you get the take my money, right? You understand exactly what I'm going through. But that's not going to happen if all you're doing, right, is, if I'm showing you here, if you're focusing on the known spoken, right? Like if I go into the electronics shop and I'm looking at a couple TVs and looking at the Samsung and the LG TV, and I say to the salesperson, what's the difference between these two TVs? And all they do is they read the contents of the card underneath the TV. I'm like, I'm not an idiot. I could have done that myself, right? I want you to tell me what I'm not even asking about, like the things that I should know, right? And that's why this tactic of assumptive priming is so powerful. And I'll tell you, like, I bought lots of stuff, even in the last couple of years, having seen this assumptive priming tactic. And the great thing is that you can use it in so many different situations. So to give you like some examples of like where you can actually use this thing, and now I'm going to move my head back to the corner here. It's making me nervous, just kind of floating up there into the ether. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can use this. I say, in targeted marketing, right? So like imagine if I went out, which I have not done yet, but I could, and go out and I said, hey, you know what, David, what do you do at Cerebral Selling? Like I might say, like I specifically work with young, enthusiastic sales reps who are unable to muster the focus and conviction and tone needed to convert older, more experienced buyers, right? That's what I do. And if you were one of my target customers in that kind of, segment who had a lot of young, enthusiastic reps, you might say, take my money, like help me if that's what you do. And you may not have realized that those kind of forces and passions were actually driving you, but that's what happens. Like that's the problem you're experiencing. And I reached into your head and I picked it out, and not because I was making it up, but because I know, right? I know. Now you can know too, even if you've not done the job of the people that you're calling on through proper like research and marketing and thought, like you can muster these same things too. So I say through your marketing, you can do this. I remember like I joined a group recently, a fantastic group, a mastermind group of coaches and trainers. And I remember seeing the fellow that runs this on a video on his website. And he said, hey, look, we're looking for 7-figure coaches and thought leaders and people who do all this stuff. And, and he said, you know what? Hey, look, if you're doing really well in your business, you're serving your customers, it's fantastic. Like you are in rarefied air. There's not a lot of people that get to do what you do. But let me ask you this, do you want to grow? Do you want to scale? Of course you do. A lot of people do. And you probably got here by, hustle, customer service, attention to detail, a lot of hard work. But let me ask you, if I asked you to 5x your business, could you work 5 times harder than you're doing now? Could you hustle 5 times more? Right? I bet you can't. Right? And then as I'm watching this, I'm like, yes, he's reaching into my mind and he's pulling out what I'm thinking. I remember when I had to get pictures taken. So if you actually see the picture that's in the back, okay, now you're gonna make me pull it out. So the picture in the back of the book about the author in the book, right? This was taken by a great guy named Darius Bashar. And so feel free to go check out his website. But I remember when I was trying to figure out, okay, I need pictures, new headshots taken for the book. And someone recommended him, and I went to his website, and he has a video on his website, and it said, I work with creators, with thought leaders who are out there to change the world, who want to see, I'll never forget, who want to see the best picture that anyone has ever taken of them. Right? I'm like, take my money, right? Because now that's not why I went to the website, right? But what is he doing? There's this assumptive priming. He knows that his marketing, like back to like this, right? He knows that his marketing is designed to target people like me. And that's why with your marketing, the more focused you are, the better you're going to be. But I say this doesn't have to come down to like a salesperson doing this. You can put this out there online on your marketing, on your website, on your videos. You can also use this for inbound qualification. And I'll tell you, like that one cloud bookkeeping client that I work with, they really nailed this assumptive priming tactic. And they know that when their clients come in, that they're typically coming in from like one of those few places. And so they trained their sales team to really leverage this assumptive priming tactic. And they told me that they were able to take their ramp time of these new reps down from like 3 or 4 months down to a few weeks to get the same conversion rate that they were getting in 3 or 4 months of ramp. They were getting that conversion rate out of their reps in 3 or 4 weeks just by teaching them this assumptive priming tactic, because it's so powerful to be able to reach into someone's head and pull out what they're thinking. And then, finally, there's the outbound prospecting, of course, right? So when we reach out to our prospects, again, one of the biggest challenges when we think about, I'm going to go back to this, right, is that we just sound the same as everyone else. Like we say the same, oh, it's David from Cerebral Selling. I help people learn how to, sell more and increase revenue and gain confidence. And like everyone says that, right? That is not a differentiated pitch. And so you can use this same tactic when you are executing your outbound motion as well. So, I just want to kind of frame this up. This is absolutely by far the number one. You asked for highest conversion tactic. You didn't say what was the easiest tactic, because as you can see, this tactic requires careful planning, careful execution, focus on the tone. It requires you to kind of distribute the nature of this tactic throughout, your business, to all the, sales, marketing, inbound, outbound, and so on. But it also requires you to kind of really get deep inside your customer's head and really understand what it is that is motivating them. And sometimes that's, first of all, it's hard to do. And second of all, it's not something that you can often just ask people and they'll just tell you, right? So you really have to do some recon to really connect the dots. But my advice to you, if you're looking for a place to start, I have lots of content. Certainly in the book, there's lots of content. If you're looking at, my YouTube channel, there's this video that I would probably start off with, Mastering the 3 Types of Customer Problems. This is the link to part 1. If you just go on my YouTube channel, which is just Cerebral Selling, look it up on YouTube, you'll see part 1. Part 1 will have a link in it to part 2, so you can continue on from there, as well as some links to, in both videos, by the way, to a bunch of other content. But this is where I would start as you're thinking about, okay, how do I achieve like a higher level of conversion? It really requires you to understand what your customer is focused on, what they're thinking, especially the stuff that they don't want to tell you, and leverage that in your whole sales motion, in your whole sales marketing motion. So that is what I have for you today in our kind of first inaugural book club meetup in the Cerebral Selling Sales Lab. We will absolutely be doing more of these things. If you're watching this video and you're not seeing it live in the Cerebral Selling Sales Lab now, you can head over, just go on Facebook, search under groups, Cerebral Selling Sales Lab, join the group, because I'm going to be doing these live videos very, very frequently. And every week I'll just kind of tackle another tactic, another little problem that will help you in your sales journey. But, I want to kind of like end as we began here. I'm going to just, go back. And I just want to say thank you. This journey of writing this book and the reception it's got, like as I'm, you're looking at all these little things, you don't understand necessarily all the context, but I know, the fellow in Denmark who sent me the copy of the book, and Dory Clark, you can see there. It's, the fellow who's reading in the Middle East, the Kindle version there at the top. I love the amazing response and the impact this book has had. It's been a total dream come true. And so I want to just thank you sincerely for supporting the book, supporting the content, but also the mission, like why did I write the book in the first place? The mission is to help the world of sales, to help and in many ways rehabilitate the world of sales, if I can say that. The first chapter in the book, I called the Cobra Kai paradox. There's just this idea that, we grow up and we learn sales by accident from whoever taught us. And if we choose the wrong sensei, then sometimes we get led, down a little bit astray. And so part of the purpose of the book is to just, open people's mind to, various tactics that we can execute that are actually rooted in science, that are rooted in the right kind of tone and approach. And I actually do want to spend more time talking about tone and approach in future lives and future videos, because tone and approach is actually something, while I do talk about it in the book, sometimes it's hard to get across 100% in the book, in writing, right? The video is a really great format for that. So with that, again, just want to send you a huge thank you. Thank you for joining the live today, and let's connect again here real soon.